We obviously have no protection of our laws. And so we have to secure the borders, then we have to move on with the program that I just mentioned, and we have to address the issue of the people who are already here illegally. Yes, ma'am, you were next.
The piece that I haven't heard you talk about seems to me behind many of the things you're discussing, and that's education. Cost of education, both public and private, are soaring. A lot of people would say that No Child Left Behind is in fact a bit of a failure. And a lot of the things you're talking about require a very good education. So could you discuss your education policy?
First of all, I agree with your statement that education, it all goes back to education and training. And by the way, in this, I believe in free trade, but I think we have failed to provide the proper education and training programs for displaced workers. That has to be a priority in our future, to give these workers who have been displaced an opportunity. But on the subject of education, I agree with you that No Child Left Behind was flawed, but I also agree that it was a good beginning. I disagree with those who want to scrap it completely. It's been in effect for some years now. We should go back and look at it and fix it where it needs fixing. Because for us to go back to where we were before we had any comparison between the children's performance in Minnesota as compared with those in Arizona or any place else, we've got to reward good teachers more. We've got to find bad teachers in another line of work. We've got to do all the things that you and I know about. But I think fundamental to all this is choice and competition. I was recently in New Orleans. I'm sure all of us are keenly aware the tragedy that befell New Orleans as a result of Katrina. Well, they had to start over from square one. They now have 30 charter schools in New Orleans, and for the first time, according to their governor, we are beginning to see a dramatic increase in the quality of education. In other words, I believe in charter schools. They're not that much better, or even sometimes they're worse, but they provide competition. I believe that if someone wants to homeschool their children and they can pass the test, they ought to be able to do that. I think we ought to obviously reward good teachers and good performing schools by giving them all the funds necessary to continue. But I really believe that choice and competition are the answer. And could I just add one postscript? It isn't necessarily money that does the job. You can find school system in America that on a per capita, per student basis, they spend more money and yet the results are worse. So obviously we want to fund where necessary, but we've also got to have choice and competition and teacher quality. And again, I think to remain the world's leader in the 21st century, education is obviously one of two or three key elements in achieving that goal. Yes, ma'am.
Thank you for being here tonight, Senator. I'm a victim of too many sound bites. And earlier you were mentioning you would want to be able, as president, to declare victory in Iran and bring the troops home. What is the criteria of victory, your criteria, and where does Iran fit into that?
Thank you. I've been the victim of a couple of sound bites on this issue myself. I think the signs are very clear, and this wasn't invented with the surge. It's a classic strategy or tactic in some respects that is employed in these kinds of conflicts. As the Iraqi military takes over more and more of those responsibilities, and the Iraqi government is more effective, then David Petraeus, who has said he will evaluate next month in July as to what our troop levels should be. So I am confident that if he assesses the situation in a way that we are succeeding, and he feels that it is safe to withdraw more troops, then he will recommend it. The problem with all this progress that we've been making is that it's very fragile. It's very fragile. The Iraqi people are just beginning to start to lead normal lives. And if we see setbacks, and I guarantee you they are not finished, many of these Shiite militias, the former Ba'athist people that are still washing around, as well as Al-Qaeda and other rogue elements, some of them are just outright militias. Not only malicious, but militias. And so I am confident that we will withdraw and we will be able to come home. But I also want to add that the casualties are at the lowest that they've been in years. So it's not only the fact that we need to withdraw as we succeed, but we also want Americans to come home unharmed, and we want them to come home. So it's very important that we continue to succeed and be able to withdraw. In the meantime, I think one of the important achievements are, as I said earlier in my remarks, it's Iraqi military that's in Mosul today doing the brunt of the fighting with American support. It's Iraqi military that went into Basra with Maliki ordering them to do so. And at first he had a very bad experience, but then it got better. It is the Iraqi military that's in Sadr City. 2.5 to 3 million people live in terrible conditions there that are doing the job with American support. That was the whole purpose of it. So I believe that if we can see the same progress that we have seen in the past 6, 9 months, year or so, then I think you will see Americans come home with honor and victory. And I also believe, again, that as the Iraqi foreign minister stated in town just the other day, and I met with him, and he said he talked to Senator Obama on the phone, he told him, he said, we are succeeding, but it's fragile, And we don't want to have an artificial date set with the withdrawal of American troops. And if we'd have done what he wanted to do a long time ago, I am convinced that we would have been in a wider war. Yes. Does that respond, or let me go back a second because you're not.
Here's one more thing. In what way would have you handled this war differently from your soon-to-be or next president, or Mr. Bush?
Thank you for asking that question. I went over to Iraq shortly after our initial military victory, and I talked to sergeant majors, and I talked to captains and majors, and they all came up to me because, as you know, they know I served the military, and they said, Senator McCain, we're going to lose this thing. We don't have enough troops on the ground. We're going to lose. And I came back after that stunning initial victory. I came back and I gave speeches. I argued. I was called disloyal by Republicans for not supporting that strategy. And I said, here's the strategy that's going to work. We've got to do and work it. So my experience has been that was a terribly flawed strategy that was used at the beginning. We didn't have enough troops on the ground. You would go into neighborhoods and take control during the day and then leave, and the bad guys would come back in. I mean, and I heard it. I heard it from our non-commissioned officers. Those are the ones who are, in all due respect, the smartest people in the military. And they're the ones that told me, said, we don't have enough troops over here. We can't control this country. And I came back and I took on Rumsfeld and I took on the others. And so that was the great mistake that was made, was that strategy. I thank you.